Hello, Abraham, and thank you for finding me. I had asked Source for some more detailed information about how we should live this life, and he sent you. So,
and you were sent.
Thank you.
Also, in
Thank
other
you.
words, we're all in this together.
Thank you.
We can't answer questions until somebody asks them, can we?
That's correct.
The book doesn't say, just stand there and we'll give you the answer. It says, ask.
Absolutely. As we speak, I feel a stone toward the back of my back, which is, I'm told by the doctors, gallstones. And I was instructed to have surgery to have them removed. But you probably know intuitively that I've had many surgeries before that were unnecessary. And so I wasn't really feeling that I should have another one. And so I chose not to. And the doctor said, well, don't be stupid. You really should have this done. And I still wasn't getting a feeling that I should, so I didn't. Am I making a mistake with this?
Well, you can't make a mistake unless you think you're making a mistake. And we want to clarify that. In other words, when you want something and you know that what you want is coming about, then you're in alignment and it comes about and your body can right itself. The reason the doctor is not wanting you to be stubborn about this is because the doctor has, through his training, discovered action ways of dealing with the results of misaligned energy. In other words, the hospitals are full of those who are finding an action remedy for something that they did with their vibration. It is easier in a small town where the doctor really knows his patients for him to track this than it is in a big city where his clientele moves about a bit. But doctors are noticing also that until the vibrational root of an imbalance called an illness of some kind is understood, and that vibrational imbalance is tended to, then it just erupts in another and another and another and another and another way. So tending to something physically gives you temporary relief from it, but it doesn't keep it from coming back in that way or in another similar way. So while we are not disagreeing with the doctor that there are surgical methods that could bring you relief, we also would say it doesn't do a lot of good to deal with something surgically if you're not going to follow up with it or even precede it with tending to the energy imbalance, which is the reason for it to begin with. You said you've had unnecessary surgeries, and we want to say all surgeries are unnecessary in that you could deal with it vibrationally. In other words, your body is made up of trillions of cells that are being affected vibrationally. And so psychic surgeons, energy surgeons, so to speak, can work on you cellularly and bring about resolution. But if you don't know that, and if you don't believe that, it cannot be. And medicine, it's interesting, particularly in this culture, works very hard to make you question your ability to be well. It's as if they have forgotten that healing is natural. It won't be a surprising thing when they start showing you advertisements that begin questioning that if you cut yourself it will heal up. And yet all of you know that from the first knee you skinned, that your body naturally finds ways of adjusting and healing. It has an idea of itself and it brings itself back into continuity of that, you see. And unless you have confused the cells of your body with an inordinate amount of pushing against kind of thinking, your body will come into alignment again and again and again. In fact, it does. If all of you or any of you had the ability to go for a battery of tests and you went every day, twice a day or 3 times a day, they would find a lot more wrong with you. Not only because they're looking closer, but because they would catch you on the day that something was beginning. There are all kinds of beginning diseases that begin within you, but you do something about the vibrational bump before it becomes a physical lump, you see. That's really what we're talking about here. But no worries if it becomes physical. Deal with it. Do the surgery. It doesn't matter. We're not trying to guide you away from the surgery. We're just saying follow up, or precede it even better, with some thought about powerful expectation of your body coming into alignment. It will. It knows what to do. The cells of your body are highly intelligent. They know how to be whole. So then someone would say, well then, why does anybody ever get sick? And we say, what sickness is a shadow that's cast by thought that disallows the light to shine. That's all that it is. And when you begin thinking thoughts that allow the light to shine, in essence, the shadow goes away. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people looking for the first sign of the shadow that as soon as they see it and point it out to you, then the shadow is bigger, because now your worry about whatever it is that they have seen is the reason for the casting of the shadow now. It's one thing to have a thought that you've been carrying on for a while, a resistance against something, and have it bumping in the background, so to speak, where it would be relatively easy for you to clean it up and move up the emotional scale, and then have someone spot it with an x-ray or a test of some kind and give it a label, and then talk to you about the horror of whatever it is. And now suddenly you're in a whole different place on the emotional scale. Also, we think that it is very helpful relative to the subject of physical well-being to acknowledge that along this emotional scale, you know how there are emotions that feel like hope, and there are emotions that feel like appreciation, and there are emotions that feel like frustration and overwhelmment, and there are emotions that feel like anger, and there are emotions that feel like fear and disempowerment, and a lot of emotional labels that we didn't talk about that are in there somewhere. And if you will feel your way up and down the emotional scale for a while, and then feel your way up and down the physical trail of illnesses or symptoms, you'll begin to notice that it's very easy to acknowledge where various symptoms or manifestations should appear on the emotional scale. In other words, if you're in a feeling of despair and victimhood a lot of the time, not only would a very powerful disease be a match to that, but things that also match that vulnerability, like armed robberies or stray bullets or things of that nature. If you are in revenge and rage a great deal of time, or even the lower rage of anger, and have been there for a very long time, then physical symptoms that begin showing up are of a stronger nature, such as heart attacks and strokes. In other words, when you hold something in your consciousness for a long period of time, law of attraction begins to amplify it until it gets bigger and bigger. And when you hold yourself, whether you mean to or not, apart from who you really are, the stress of that takes a toll on your body. Mm-hmm. And so the answer to all things is to chill out and relax and find ease, and find an easier way of looking at it, and harder to do after something is manifested, we will admit, but possible nonetheless. Here's a question that we would put to ourselves. What is the path of least resistance here? If it's a simple surgery, the path of least resistance may very well be that. And then the path of least resistance from then on would be just to continue good thoughts and to expect it not to return, and to know that you are in balance. But if it is some really incredible life-altering surgery, then the path of least resistance might be to take a little while and clean up your vibration. Only you know what the path of least resistance is, you see. And sometimes when we throw out the term path of least resistance, we feel you cringe a little bit, because valiant, virtuous, hardworking, worthy-seeking beings that you are, you think the path of least resistance is the wimp's way out. Oh, I shouldn't take the path of least resistance. I should take the hardest path, because if I take the hardest path, when I triumph, they'll want to write a book about me or give me a medal of some kind. And we say, oh, you torture yourselves unnecessarily. Just do it. Just do whatever it is that seems like the easy way. And then your doctor won't be forced to call you names in order to humiliate you into giving him a reason to live.
Exactly.
So when he says, what were his words to you? Don't be stupid. And what he was thinking is, you coward, don't be stupid, you coward. You want to say to him with a smile on your face, oh, all right, I'll play along with this if it will help you pay the rent.
Exactly.
And then say, there are other methods that may take me more time, but I'll play with you in this way this time. In other words, let him know that you're a thinking person. And then say to him, but I'm no longer going to hold you responsible for my healing. I'm taking full responsibility for what comes next. In other words, play with him. Let him know that you have come to understand that you're in charge of your body. And if he's willing to play with you in the way that you want to play, then fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.